if I told you that the most powerful people in history rarely announce their intentions? The true masters of influence don't push or persuade. They simply arrange the pieces and let others make the moves they've invisibly designed. Welcome to Machiavelli's shadow method, where you'll discover the art of influence that operates beyond detection. This isn't about manipulation or control. It's about understanding the subtle architecture of human decision-making. Think about it. Have you ever had an idea pop into your head, feeling completely original, only to realize later it was carefully planted by someone else? Or found yourself making choices in an environment that was deliberately crafted to guide you toward a specific decision? The most effective influence happens when people believe they're acting entirely of their own accord. The masters of this method, from political strategists to business leaders to social revolutionaries, understand that direct persuasion creates resistance, but indirect influence bypasses our mental defenses entirely. In the next few minutes, I'll reveal the exact techniques that allow you to shape perceptions, plant ideas, and architect environments so effectively that others will champion your vision as if it were their own. These are the same methods used throughout history by those who understood that true power lies not in forcing compliance, but in making others want what you want. Stay with me, because what you're about to learn will fundamentally change how you see every human interaction from this moment forward. Before I reveal these Machiavellian principles, understand this. Once you see how power truly operates, you cannot unsee it. This knowledge will fundamentally shift how you read people, situations, and the games being played around you every day. If you're not ready for that level of awareness, stop watching now. For everyone else, pay attention to every word. Number 1. The orbital influence technique. Have you ever noticed how some people never seem to directly convince others, yet somehow their ideas always end up being adopted? There's a hidden pattern here most people miss completely. When you observe truly influential figures, you'll see they rarely target the person they want to influence. Instead, they work through an invisible network. Imagine you want to convince your boss to adopt a new strategy. The obvious approach would be to schedule a meeting and make your case directly. But this triggers immediate resistance. It's human nature to question ideas presented to us head-on. What if there was a better way that sidesteps this resistance entirely? Consider this instead. What if your boss suddenly heard about your idea from 3 different people they deeply respect, all within the same week? A colleague mentions it casually over lunch. Then an industry peer brings it up at a networking event. Finally, a trusted advisor suggests it during their regular meeting. Each time, the idea appears slightly different, yet fundamentally the same. This is no coincidence. This is the first powerful technique in our shadow method, the orbital influence technique. Instead of directly approaching your target, you identify and influence the people they trust most. Think of these trusted individuals as satellites orbiting your main target. When you carefully plant consistent messaging across these satellites, you create a sphere of influence that surrounds your target from multiple directions. The magic happens when someone hears the same core idea from multiple trusted sources. The human mind naturally assumes this represents consensus reality rather than coordinated influence. We're wired to believe something must be true when we hear it repeatedly from different sources we respect. The key is ensuring each message carrier appears to be acting independently. If your target suspects coordination, the spell breaks immediately. Each satellite should present the idea in their own authentic voice, with their own reasoning, as if they naturally arrived at it themselves. This technique works because it leverages social proof, our tendency to look to others for cues on what to think and how to behave. When multiple respected figures endorse an idea, it creates an invisible pressure to conform that operates below conscious awareness. Think of yourself as the conductor of an orchestra. Each musician plays their individual part, seemingly independent, yet you've carefully arranged the entire symphony to create one harmonious effect. This is technique number 1 of 5 in Machiavelli's shadow method, the orbital influence technique. By orchestrating a constellation of trusted voices around your target, you create a reality where your idea seems like the natural, obvious consensus, not an external suggestion to be resisted. Number 2, environmental chess, the reality architect approach. Let me ask you something important. When was the last time someone successfully changed your deeply held opinion through direct argument? Rarely happens, right? That's because most people make a critical mistake. They battle against the natural defenses of the human mind. But what if you could bypass those defenses altogether? Every day, invisible forces shape your decisions without your awareness. The placement of items in a store, the temperature of a room, the people present in a meeting. These environmental factors guide your choices more powerfully than any logical argument ever could. The most influential people understand this secret. To change behavior, don't fight the mind. Change the environment the mind operates within. This brings us to technique number 2 of 5 in our Machiavelli's shadow method, environmental chess, the reality architect approach. Most people focus their energy on changing minds, but true masters focus on changing spaces. Consider this. Would you eat more if your plate was larger? Research shows you absolutely would, by up to 22% more, without ever realizing it. The environment silently shaped your behavior without triggering any resistance. When you become a reality architect, you stop trying to directly persuade people. Instead, you strategically arrange physical and social environments to create invisible pathways that naturally guide behavior in your desired direction. This works because humans follow the path of least resistance by default. Let me show you how this works in practice. If you want someone to choose option A over option B, don't tell them why A is better. Instead, make A slightly more convenient to access. Place it in their line of sight. Make sure they encounter positive information about A before they encounter B. Ensure the right people are in the room when A is discussed. Control the timing so they consider A when energy levels are optimal. This extends beyond physical space. You can architect information environments too. Controlling which information someone encounters first creates a powerful anchor that shapes how they process everything that follows. By strategically arranging what data points people see and in what order, you guide their conclusions while maintaining their sense of independent decision-making. The beauty of environmental chess is that people navigate through your carefully designed reality while experiencing complete freedom of choice. They never feel pushed because there is no push, only a thoughtfully arranged landscape that makes certain choices feel natural while others become inconvenient. Remember this fundamental truth. Humans don't make decisions in a vacuum. Every choice occurs within a context that either supports or hinders it. When you control the context, you influence the choice, all while operating completely below the radar of conscious awareness. So, when you want to influence without detection, stop trying to change minds directly. Instead, become the architect of reality, carefully designing the environment where decisions are made. This is how you guide behavior without triggering resistance. Number 3, the reverse ownership principle. Think about the ideas you defend most passionately. I'll bet they share one powerful quality. You believe they're yours. There's something almost magical about how fiercely we protect and promote ideas we feel we've created ourselves. But here's the question that changes everything. What if those ideas weren't entirely yours to begin with? What if they were carefully, invisibly planted for you to discover and develop? This leads us to technique number 3 of 5 in our exploration of subtle influence, The reverse ownership principle. The most resistant person becomes your strongest advocate when they believe they've originated the idea themselves. This technique requires something counterintuitive, the discipline to withhold your complete vision. Instead of presenting fully formed ideas, you strategically offer fragments that others feel compelled to assemble themselves. Think about how a mystery novel works. The author doesn't tell you the solution. They provide carefully selected clues that make you work to solve the puzzle. When you figure it out, you feel a rush of satisfaction and ownership over the conclusion. The reverse ownership principle works exactly the same way, but in real-world influence scenarios. Here's how to implement this. Instead of saying, "We should pursue strategy X," you might ask, "What do you think about this market trend?" Then share a piece of information that, when logically extended, leads to strategy X. Add another piece. "I've noticed our competitors struggling with approach Y." Finally, present a challenge. "I wonder if there's a way to capitalize on these patterns." You've now created intentional gaps that the other person feels an almost irresistible urge to fill. The human mind naturally seeks completion. We're pattern recognition machines that hate unfinished business. When someone invests mental energy connecting these dots, they experience what psychologists call the IKEA effect. We value what we help build. The key distinction is that you're not manipulating people to accept bad ideas. You're simply changing how good ideas are presented so they bypass natural resistance. The ideas must have genuine merit. You're just removing obstacles to their consideration. This approach requires patience and restraint. You must resist the temptation to claim credit or complete the thought process for others. Your role is to be the invisible gardener who plants seeds, not the salesperson who demands immediate commitment. When people invest their own mental energy developing an idea, they form what psychologists call cognitive ownership, an unbreakable bond that makes them defend it more vigorously than any external suggestion. They become the idea's champion because, in their mind, it genuinely is theirs. The greatest compliment to your influence isn't hearing "you were right." It's hearing someone passionately advocate for your original vision, completely unaware of your role in its creation. This is the essence of the reverse ownership principle, creating change so subtle that others believe they initiated it themselves. By mastering this third technique, you'll find that your most powerful influence happens when you're willing to let others take credit for ideas you've invisibly architected. If you're still here, you already think differently. That alone sets you apart. Now, sharpen your edge. Hit subscribe. This is how you stay 10 steps ahead in a world that rewards the silent strategist. Number 4. The shadow timeline method. Have you ever watched someone completely transform their opinion, yet swear they've believed it all along? It's a fascinating phenomenon. People rarely acknowledge when they've been influenced. Instead, they rewrite their personal history to maintain the illusion of consistency. This insight reveals something crucial about human nature that most influence attempts completely ignore. Direct attempts to change someone's position trigger immediate resistance. The bigger the proposed change, the stronger the pushback. But what if there was a way to create massive shifts in thinking that happen so gradually, so naturally, that the person never experiences that resistance at all? This brings us to technique number 4 of 5, the shadow timeline method. Most influence attempts fail because they're too immediate, too direct. They trigger our psychological immune system, our natural defense against external persuasion. The shadow timeline method works differently. Instead of focusing on immediate change, you map out a sequence of small, seemingly innocuous shifts in thinking that compound over time. Imagine you want someone to adopt a completely new approach to something important, their career, their business strategy, or their personal habits. Asking for this change directly would likely fail. Instead, you create a carefully designed path of micro-shifts, each one so small it flies completely under the radar. Each individual step appears unrelated to your ultimate goal, but collectively creates an inevitable path toward your desired outcome. The person never feels pushed because each small shift feels natural, reasonable, and completely of their own choosing. For example, instead of asking someone to completely change their business strategy, you might first share an interesting case study about a tangentially related industry. Weeks later, point out a small problem with their current approach. Later, still, mention how the principle from that case study might solve similar small problems. Gradually introduce elements that reframe their thinking until they naturally arrive at the conclusion you intended all along. The power of this method comes from understanding that humans resist change but embrace evolution. We all want to believe we're growing and improving over time rather than abandoning our past views. The shadow timeline creates change so gradual that it feels like natural personal evolution. This technique requires 3 elements most people lack: patience, strategic thinking, and the discipline to focus on long-term outcomes. You must resist the urge for immediate results and trust in the compound effect of small, consistent nudges in the right direction. The shadow timeline method works because it respects a fundamental truth about human psychology. We all have a need for consistency in our self-image. When change happens gradually, our minds seamlessly incorporate each small shift into our identity, maintaining the illusion of consistency even as we completely transform. By the time someone reaches your intended destination, the journey feels like their natural evolution rather than external guidance. They own every step of the process because, from their perspective, they freely chose each small shift that led them there. Master this 4th technique, and you'll discover that the most profound influence isn't about forcing rapid change. It's about architecting a path of gradual evolution so natural that it becomes part of someone's personal story rather than an external idea they must resist. Number 5. The contrast canvas strategy. Think about the last time you made an important decision. You probably considered several options before making your choice, but here's what most people miss. Those alternative options weren't just neutral possibilities. They actively shaped how you perceived your final choice. This reveals a powerful truth about human decision-making that most people completely overlook. We don't evaluate options in isolation. We judge them in comparison to alternatives. A house doesn't seem expensive or inexpensive on its own. It seems expensive compared to a cheaper house, or inexpensive compared to a more expensive one. This comparative nature of human judgment is the foundation of our 5th and final technique in Machiavelli's shadow method, the contrast canvas strategy. Unlike our previous techniques, this approach doesn't hide your preferred option. Instead, it carefully frames it against strategically selected alternatives that make it shine by comparison. It's like a master painter who understands that the same color appears dramatically different depending on what surrounds it. Here's how it works. Instead of simply presenting your preferred idea, you deliberately present certain options or ideas that serve as contrasting backgrounds. These aren't fake or manipulative alternatives. They're legitimate options that, when seen alongside your preferred choice, naturally position it as the most reasonable middle ground. For example, if you want someone to accept a moderate proposal, first expose them to an extreme version that makes your actual proposal seem reasonable by comparison. If you want a $5,000 budget approved, first discuss the theoretical benefits of a $15,000 approach before presenting your actual request as the practical, cost-effective alternative. The key is ensuring all options presented are legitimate and truthful. This isn't about creating false choices. It's about strategically highlighting genuine alternatives that naturally frame your preferred option in the most favorable light. When people feel they've thoroughly evaluated multiple perspectives before arriving at a conclusion, they trust their decision more deeply and become resistant to counter-influence. This technique leverages what psychologists call the contrast effect, our tendency to perceive things differently when presented alongside other options. A lukewarm bath feels hot if you've just been in cold water, but that same bath feels cold if you've just been in hot water. The temperature didn't change, only the contrast did. The contrast canvas strategy works because it transforms how your idea is perceived without changing the idea itself. By carefully selecting which options are considered alongside your preferred choice, you control the contrast effect that will inevitably occur in the decision-maker's mind. What makes this approach so powerful is that it fully respects the other person's agency. You're not restricting choices, you're expanding them while understanding how those choices will be naturally perceived in relation to each other. The decision-maker experiences complete freedom while being gently guided by the principles of human perception. Master this fifth technique, and you'll understand that influence isn't just about what you present. It's about what you present it next to. When you control the canvas against which your ideas are evaluated, you shape perceptions while maintaining complete transparency about the options available. As we reach the end of our journey through Machiavelli's shadow method, take a moment to appreciate the subtle power you now hold. These 5 techniques, the orbital influence technique, environmental chess, the reverse ownership principle, the shadow timeline method, and the contrast canvas strategy, represent the hidden architecture of influence that shapes our world every day. What makes these approaches so powerful is that they work with human nature rather than against it. They recognize that lasting influence isn't about forcing compliance. It's about creating conditions where others naturally move in your desired direction while maintaining their sense of autonomy and choice. Remember, with this knowledge comes responsibility. True mastery lies not just in applying these techniques, but in doing so ethically, using them to advance ideas and outcomes that genuinely benefit others. The ultimate test of influence isn't just whether you can shape someone's thinking, but whether they're better for having been influenced by you. Now go forward and apply what you've learned, not to control others, but to more effectively bring your positive vision into reality through the subtle art of undetected influence. The next video the algorithm chose for you isn't random. It's your next tactical upgrade. Click it now and continue your silent ascent. Those who hesitate lose influence.